So in 1997, I decided I was going to write a best-selling book. So the first thing I did, just listen to what I do, because I want you to replicate it. It's a step-by-step. I got an A4 sheet, and I wrote on it, I am a best-selling author, and I put it over my workspace. I also put it on my office door. Every dream must come with a deadline. So, out of the air, to save questions, I picked a date. May the 25th. I had no idea why I picked the date. It just came to me. So we were probably July, August of the previous year, and I decided I'm going to have this finished by May the 25th. So, over my workspace, I am a best-selling author, manuscript finished by a certain date, and on the back of the door, I am a best-selling author, manuscript finished by a certain date. I was surrounded by my dream. But I'm now going to tell you what some people do when they have a dream. Is that they take out another piece of paper. And again, my colleague alluded to it yesterday. They write down the pros and cons, the positives and negatives of you being a big dreamer. So I want you to remember this. Knowledge will always give you enough reasons not to act. Please write that down. If in your company you are thinking big, do not analyze it to death. Focus on the dream and see what happens. Because you will always find enough reasons not to act. In my case, I got a D in English in my junior cert when I was about 15. D is not so good. But I was consistent, because in my Leaving Cert, I got a D in English in my Leaving Cert as well. So I was bad all the time at English. So I hadn't much of a record at English. I had no publisher. I had no background in writing a personal development book. And in 1997, personal development and motivation, as my colleagues will tell you, particularly in Ireland, was stuff for loonies almost. It was way out there in 1997 to be talking about motivation. Okay? The positives I had was I was a business consultant, so I had access to content, and I had lots of energy and enthusiasm. That's all I could do. So I think it would be fair to say I had a lot more negatives than positives. But it didn't matter, because all I was doing was focusing on the dream. So what happened? I'll tell you what happened. Within approximately a few days, a knock came to my door. It might be a few months later. It was a lady from the local area. She told me that she had heard I was writing a book. Who was she? Who do you think this person was? It turns out that she was a retired English teacher. And if you want to write a book, it would be very good to have somebody who's good at English on the team. I was a D student, so I wasn't so good. Then I was asked to speak at a major conference in Ireland, and the head of, it was actually Network Women in Business, the head of that organization was a publisher. When she heard me speak, she said she would publish the book. And then I started going on my travels around the world and creating content, including one of the challenges I did. It's for another day. I begged on the streets of Melbourne. Begged on the streets of Melbourne. It was quite a challenge, and I wrote about that in the book. Interestingly enough, I then surrounded myself with 10 people that I trusted for their opinion. And I sent, when I had my first copy done, I sent it out to the 10 people. The first bit of feedback was, good speech, horrible book. And over time, it got better and better. I got my last review of my book on May the 24th. Remember when I wrote down May the 25th for my goal, even though I hadn't got a clue how to write a book. I had no background in it. So we're talking about the dream in positive present tense, the brain's language. I am a best-selling author. Dream with deadline, May the 25th. So we got the book ready. This is the book. Can the camera pick this up by any chance? Okay, so it's okay. Anyway, you can look at it later. This is the book, and there's a picture of me on the back. And I wanted to look like a guru, so I put my hand like this. But it ended up that I had my finger in my ear, so it didn't look so good. And that day I had a cold, and at that time, there was no Photoshop. So as my colleagues here, you can trust them. Does that look like a red nose to you?
Definitely got a cold.
I definitely have a cold, that is correct. I had a big red nose. So I think it's fair to say that wasn't so nice, that book. Not so pretty. Oh, you didn't have to agree with me. Okay. Okay. This book, so, was then published. After that, so we can be very clear, I knocked on every TV show's door, every radio show's door, every local radio, national papers. 1. 2, I went around the whole of Ireland and went into every bookshop and asked them, do you have How When You Don't Know How in store? I did a lot of work. A lot of work. This book sold 15,000 copies. So I want to put this in context for you. To get on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, you have to sell 3,000 copies if you sell them within a week or a month, whatever. I think it's a week, yeah? New York Times, 11,000 copies, all in a short period. But in Ireland, 15,000 copies. This is the reason I'm standing here today. It was about me, just like the people in Talking Tom, having a big dream. Dreaming about something that was way outside my capabilities. Do you realize as well, Emer Vidi from Columbia University also showed that the majority, quite a lot of the companies that were successful and breakthrough were with owners who had no background in the industry. Got that? So these successful companies were from people that had no background in the industry. How can that happen? It happens. You got it? So dare to dream. Dare to dream the impossible. So I committed to the dream and the deadline. I wasn't an idea killer. Remember, knowledge always gives you enough reasons not to act. I was laser focused over my workspace. I am a best-selling author. Manuscript finished by a certain date. On the door as I walked out of the office, I am a best-selling author. Manuscript finished by a certain date. And I focused on the dream, not on the pros and cons. And I attracted people and built a great team around me that ended up with success. Okay. So guess what happened then on April the 1st, 1998, because we're talking about resilience. I got a fax. And the fax was from the biggest publisher in the world, Random House. They wanted to buy the international rights for my book. That is the fax. You can see it yourself. Oh my God. You cannot believe how excited I was. I was just beside myself. I was invited to come over to London, and I walked through the corridors of that company. Deepak Chopra, all the Anthony Robbins, all these big, huge names. And they described me as the next Norman Vincent Peale. I walked outside the door, and I burst into tears. I cried. I couldn't believe it. It was like, oh my God, unbelievable. They invited me back for a second time. We all agreed. They says, we'll send you out the contract. And this is what happened. On June the 26th, they withdrew the offer. So I was sitting in my office when that fax came through. I had dreams. We had already a world party ready to launch. Nobody knew this news. And all of a sudden, they withdrew the offer. I remember closing the door that day and sitting down at the sofa and looking at my orange wallpaper and looking at it for hours. I was absolutely devastated. I felt that I had just touched the top of the mountain and fell off just near the peak. I was actually devastated, I'm being honest. Yeah. And this is life, and that's why I'm telling this story. So I'm now going to tell you the following. We're going to zoom forward. Since then, I have written 5 books. There's a story behind each of them I'm not going to tell you. But I'm going to tell you that as of 2 weeks ago, for the first time ever, Routledge Press is writing and going to launch some of my material worldwide. So here's the deal. Failed till 2025. Now, as you know, so that you'll know I am 29 years of age, just in case you get it wrong. Yeah? 29? It's good? Of course. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So now, believe it or not, my stuff, after it seems like 34 years, is going to go even more worldwide. I've spoken 35 countries or whatever, but I'm talking about my books, yeah? And I'm going to tell you, because I haven't got time to go through it in detail, what kept me resilient in that journey. How many people here would keep going for what is effectively 27 years at something that I love? How many people would keep going at their dream, persevering, learning from failure, trying again for 27 years and still love what you do? Many people here could do that. Won the back, we've won the middle, we've won on the left-hand side. Now we're going to have everyone, because everyone's going to copy each other. Fantastic. That's the true test of resilience. And I'm going to tell you the one thing I did that made all the difference and that got me the publishing deal, finally. I'm not going to ask you what it was. I'm going to tell you. I learned how to write. I did a course with a college. It was called Find Your Written Voice. And it changed the way I wrote. I finally learned how to write. I know I can market books, that's my job. But I wasn't a good writer. So after 27 years, I'm a slow learner. I solved the problem that I had. I wasn't a good writer. Even being a best-selling author, I can say that genuinely. I'm sure the guys, thank you, appreciate that, thank you. I solved the problem I had, I met it face on, and that's how we changed the circumstances.